Java programming is technology. So that means instead of having a very large environment, so you would go to maybe like download Spring Boot, then split these into small architecture, so let's just call them micro web apps. Don't think Java programming again is hard. So it's one of the simplest programming languages. So without much stories, so let's get started by first installing our Java JDK. So Java needs JDK to run, and also we are going to use Visual Studio Code for our programming. So because we're going to start with a beginner version, so then we are going to add it to most probably the intermediate and the expert level. So that's when we are going to install IntelliJ, but it's fine if you've already installed IntelliJ. Is open your browser. So one of the first things we need to do is we need Java JDK. So make sure, of course, you are connected to the internet. So I want you to download. So check from the Java, the Oracle. So from this part, I want you to check on the kind of the Java version you want. So the JDK version is actually like, we have so many of them. So I want you to go for either way. So I'm using JDK version 15, but you can download this one. So just click on the download. Then it's going to ask you to accept the license. Then you're going to check from this side. So for the Linux, you have your the RPM and the GZ, the Debian. For those you are using Debian. For the Mac, you have these ones, and then for the Windows, you have the 64-bit installer. So you can download this one. So just click on download, and then it's actually going to download. So because I already have mine, so I'm just going to open the directory where I installed mine. So JDK 15. So once you have this, I just want you to directly click on it. So double click on it. Then it's going to ask you for the admin's privileges to run it. So you're just going to click yes. Then you actually like getting to prepare for instance. So because I already have mine installed, then it's just would you like to install it? Of course, I won't want to reinstall it. So just click on next. So everything remains default. So just click on next until it finishes installing. So once you're done with that, then again I want you to go to your browser, then go download the Visual Studio Code, VS Code, depending on your operating system. So for Mac, then there is, so I'm just going to do download VS Code for Windows 10 because we are using the Windows operating system. So then you click on the first link. So you're going to see code.visual studio code. So once you click on that link, then it's going to take you to the official page for Visual Studio Code. Then you can download it from this place. So you can choose your, depending on your operating system. So for those using Mac, then you have this. For those using maybe Linux, so we have the Debian, then we have the Ubuntu and all other versions, or you can directly choose to install them directly from your terminal. So because I'm a Windows fan, so you're going to download mine here. So I'm just going to choose my depending on the one. So I'm just going to maybe like choose the 64-bit. So just click on that. So once I click on it, then it's going to prepare me for download. So you see now that it says Visual Studio Code downloading. So I just click now start download. But because again I have already downloaded my VS Code, so I'm just going to cancel it again. Then I'm going to where I downloaded it here. So because I have this one, so I'm just going to double click on it. Then again wait for the administrator's privileges to start downloading. So from this the window, from the VS Code window, so make sure you accept the license, then click on next. I think the rest mostly remains default, so just click on next. Then it will actually like tell you the installation path and everything. Then just click on install. So once it's done installing, then I guess we are good to go. So because I already again have mine installed, so I'm just going to like quit. So you may run setup once to complete. No, I'm just going to say no. Oh, okay, yes. So we are going to get started with actually the very basic. So don't worry if you've never written Java code before. So the first thing I want us to do is, once you've opened your Visual Studio Code, this is actually the environment you would be seeing. So, and for other cases, so maybe like you might see this welcoming screen here, the welcoming window. And this is actually gives you the overview of maybe like your recent files. If you want to start a new file directly, then if you need to perform any customization, then you would use this. But I want you to just maybe close that. So if you installed it for the first time, and then there are these like these windows, everything icons. So the file one will help you like save your file. So I want you to make sure that this is enabled, the autosave. This will actually help you mostly, because I don't want to be hitting Control S or Command S to save your file. So I want you to go to File, make sure that you have enabled the autosave. So the next thing is the edit. So you can do editing, so you can undo and redo. So in shortcut, the keyboard way, so just use Control Z and then Control Shift Z to redo. Then you have the view. So view, then you can access the command palette. You would want to change maybe your appearance and everything, so you can go through this. Then we have this important place where we'll be actually like interacting more. So we have the terminal, and then we have the run. So the terminal, once you click on the terminal, then you click on new terminal, then a certain window would appear here. So this window will actually be one of the most interactive part, where we will be interacting with it more. Then from here we have the output. So this is where, once we run our code, we will be able to view the output. The debug console, we will be able to actually debugging in the first place is finding a problem in a program or code. Then this will actually be showing you like where your problems are. So once we are done with that, then I just want you to close that. Then this is the interesting part. So we have start debugging. So this is the process of trying to find an error. Then we have run without debugging. So if we run without the debugging, this would actually like throw in the window whereby we will be using it to get user inputs from a keyboard. So maybe we are performing a mathematical operation and we want a user to enter maybe like some mathematical formulas or maybe numbers and operations. So this would help us more. So then this is if you click on this part, this is the file architecture. So for now it might be empty for your case because you have not opened maybe like different files. So this is the place where now you have your old files. Then don't worry about this, we'll come to learn more about them. So this is the part I want you to navigate to. So if you click on this, yeah, if you are installing the Visual Studio Code for the first time, it would be empty. But for my case, I've already have some lots of things here. These are called extensions, and extensions help us to make sure that our program runs very well. So the first extension I want you to run is, so for this place, make sure you are connected on internet. So then you can search for an extension called Code Runner. So because I'm not now connected and I have already installed, so make sure that you are connected. So once you search for Code Runner, then it will like this would appear here. This is an extension by Juan Han. So this will help you. So what this extension does is it enables you to run different programming languages on VS Code. So you can run C, C++, we have Java, all these other languages, including maybe Bash, PowerShell, Go, Lua, Ruby, and all other languages. So I want you to make sure that you've installed this. If you don't also mind, try to install this one here. So these are by Daniel. So this would help you like really a lot. Then these are just other funny extensions. So then I want you to install the Java. So you can search. So make sure you install Java. So if you now search for Java, then it would give you so many So I want you to select the Java language support. So what this does is it supports the Java from your compiler. So you will now be able to run different Java code in actually your Visual Studio Code. So once we are done with that, make sure again you have JDK. So as I've just I will be able to guide you to install JDK at the end of this lesson, so that we can now start running different Java programs. So I've just closed that. Then I want you to also close this and then head to File, go to New, and then I want you to save this file. So if you save this file, it's going to generate some code here. So this is the architecture part, the connection part. So let me just show you. So what this does, it's going to generate a public class. So the class will enable us to run different codes. So don't mind for now if you don't understand this, because you're going to cover them later in the course. So the first thing is it's going to generate this public, then class, then it's going to give a name, so maybe like Java course. Then there will be an opening and closing curly bracket, and once this is done, we will be able now to like also write some code inside here. So this is just how the architecture and the connection and the layout, the configuration actually looks like. So if you now save this, it's going to generate this file. So to delete that, so once we have that, go to file, then save as. Then I want you to choose a directory. For me, I'm just going to save it on my desktop. So I'm going to say code Java. So I want you to note something here. So when we save this code Java, so this place here will now have public class, then code Java. So this name will now be the class name of inside our editor. So this is actually like the architecture of it. So the name that is here would now be the name, the class name. So I want you to choose the .java. So just below as save type, choose Java. And then once you're done with that, I want you to click save. Wow, you see now that the code I was telling you has already been generated. So we have public class, then code Java. So note something. Your file name should be same as the class name. Otherwise, your code won't run. So once we are done with that, then we can now start by like actually, so let me just zoom this one a little bit. So I'm just going to view, then appearance. Okay, let me just go to settings, preference settings. Then I'm going to do maybe like 2 then just exit. So now it's now a little bit more visible. So we have public class code Java. So I want you to know something. When I press enter, there is some space here. So this is called indentation. So it's usually 4 tabs. So it's 1, 2. So it's already being indicated by these 4 dots. So from this, I want us to create something again. So that is another configuration. So don't worry, just know that what we are doing is configuration. So we are going to expand it more in our almost final class. So I want you to type public. So what public means is we can run our code outside this place. So public, then void. So void means there is nothing being run. So just type it. I know it might be confusing. So void main, and then something is here. So after that, I want you to open and close. So once you are done with that, then we have opening and closing curly bracket, and then inside here I want you to pass in string, then opening and closing square brackets, then args. So args is our argument. So we are telling our entire file that we will be passing some arguments within this function. So this is all you had to do, and there's nothing more. So we can now start writing our code, and our code will always come in between this place. So we'll be now writing our code here. So there's no more configuration. That was really a lot. So I want us to write a simple program in our next course. So we are going to write our first program, but before we do that, we still have some errors. So if you notice, there's something being highlighted in red in your program. So it says that cannot resolve type Java. So this means we've spelled it wrongly. Not spelling it, but we are using the wrong word. So I want you to change this to capital S. Because we still don't have the run and debug buttons here, that means we are missing something. And that is actually one thing I call static. So if you now play static, then you can now see that our program is complete. So once you see this in your program, that means everything is working very well. So you can maybe decide to change your program where you'd already saved it. So you can go to file, then save as, then you can change. So I switch mine to from desktop to another directory. That is if it doesn't actually reflect So if it doesn't like give you all this, so switch from saving it to desktop to another different folder, then open that folder. So you can go to open then folder, then you can select the folder in which you saved your file, and then click on select folder, then it will open. So when it opens, you're going to have this directory, so it's going to give you this. So then you can now start configuring, not configuring, but now running your program. So I want us to write our first program, so that should be hello world. So I would have written it this way, hello world. So this is how you write your first program in Java. But again, I want you to remember everything, if not not everything, but almost everything in Java ends with a semicolon. So for you to write to print out your first program, you have to type it in double quotes. So like print hello world. So you can maybe like choose to print something. So I can just print my name here, maybe Teams Owen, then maybe some exclamation. So whatever comes here is up to you. So I've decided to print my name, Teams Owen. So then make sure you end everything in semicolon. Now you cannot leave this thing hanging. So I want you to enclose it inside brackets. So this now gives your string security. So remember strings, so this is what we call a string. So we have Teams Owen, or let me just pull it back. So hello world. So this is the structure of printing an hello world program in Java. So you have to ensure that it comes in between the double quotes, then it's being protected by these two opening and closing brackets. Then we can now tell the computer to print it. So we can say print. So we can say print, then we can say maybe like print in the next line. So ln stands for next line, but because we don't have so many things, then you can just say print this hello world program. But what are we telling, or who are we telling to print this? So we are telling the system. So before that, so you are telling the system, hey system, can you print this? So and make sure that you actually look at it. So system starts with capital S. So back into in between there. So we are telling the system to print this, but we are not telling it where to print it. So to do that, you say system.out. So we are telling it to print out this. So we are telling it hello. So system.out, then print it. So I want you to put in a dot there. So this is complete now. So remember, this is a string, and this string we want to print it, and we are telling the system to print it out. So it goes system.out.println hello world. So you can now write it from start. So I have system.out.print. Then maybe I can now print my name here, Teams Owen. So we have these words, and then I make sure I end it with a semicolon. So once I now run my program, then I expect to see hello world and then Teams Owen. So once you run that, you see that it's hello world, then Teams Owen. Now you can still do this. Instead of printing it, maybe using this, you can use Ctrl Alt N. So once you use Ctrl Alt N, you would be able now to see the output. It's a little bit big. So Ctrl Alt N on your keyboard. So you see that it's now hello world. But these words have actually been joined vertically, vertically or horizontal anyway. So they are in the same line. So to actually make sure you are printing them in a new line, so you can switch from saying print to print in the next line. So you can say print in the next line, then ln. So you can now say system.out.print ln in this. So if you now run it using Ctrl Alt N, we now see that we have hello world and Teams below it. So let me just clear that and repeat it again. So you now see Ctrl Alt N, you now see that we have hello world, then below it comes Teams Owen. So that is really something interesting. So I can again try maybe like print numbers. So I can just say print 50. So if you want to print numbers, you don't put them in double quotes, or you can even put them. So if you now put them under double quotes, they now become something called string, but this is the numbers, though it will print the same thing. So when I run this one, you see now that we have 50 and 50. So but we'll come to understand why we use the double quotes, and then in some cases we don't use the double quotes. So that was really amazing and writing your first program. So let's get to understand something interesting called data types and variables in Java. So remember from last time we had just finished writing our first program. So that was printing out our hello world. So remember that it followed the same structure. So you have to tell the system that you want to print something, and if you're using print ln, so that means you are printing it in a new line. So out means you want it to be displayed on your console. Then what comes in here is something we call string values. So maybe like hello world, and then it's being followed by the full not full colon, but the semicolon. So if you now run this shortcut with Control Alt N for Windows, or you can go the long way, run, then go for run and run while debugging. So let's get to understand what actually these things are. So before we get to dive into data types, so let's first get to understand how data is stored in our computer memory. So a variable, I would call it a container. So just like the cases of where you have your earphones, so there's that box. So the box that is being used to store your earphones inside a package. So let's say you are delivering it using the G4S, or you are using any other. So that container, because that's the only thing you are going to request for. So for example, I'll tell my computer, like, I want to store an integer. So remember, integer values these are numbers ranging from 0 to 9. So how do you store these values inside your computer? Now, let's say, let's first start with my name. So if I was printing the hello world program, then I would say, so let me just use the shortcut for printing. Then I would say maybe like Teams. So if I now run this, then you observe that our Teams is printed. So this means once I delete this file, I won't be able to check the changes in the memory of my computer. So that's one problem. But how do we store data inside a computer memory? So we use these variables. It's just like booking space. So it's just like going into a supermarket with your luggage. Of course, you are not going to be allowed to enter into a supermarket with your luggage. So you leave the luggage at the reception, at the luggage person. So he'll give you a card, then you would go into your supermarket. Once you are done with the businesses, then you would return that card number and give it so that the person can give you back your luggage. So what you are trying to do there is you are booking space in that supermarket just to store your items. But once you want back your items, you will use the card to now retrieve your values. So let's see a simple scenario here. So let's say I want to print my name. So my name is a string, so we'll get to understand it. So just know that anything that comes in between the double quotes is a string. So I'm going to say string, my name, then say my name inside double quotes is things. So let's try to understand this thing in the supermarket scenario thing. So let's say now these were my goods, and then I'm given the card, and then okay, let's say the card is labeled maybe like 56, maybe GH. So these are the goods I've left at the counter. So, and it's unique because we don't always carry the same goods each and every person. Then I'm given the card, which this card indicates that once I give out this, then I'll be given back this my goods inside here. So my goods again inside here. So this is what we call variables. So this is booking space inside your computer memory. So now let's see how you print it. So I'll just say system.out.print. So instead of now printing this the name now in double quotes, I now print this variable here. So I can now say print my name. Now if I now run it, then you see that now the name is printed, Teams as the name has been printed out. So let's put something inside here. So let's say Kabarak. So if I now run it, now you see that Kabarak is being printed. So wherever that comes inside here we just call it a string. So let's say I want to print my age, and remember age is just an integer, and our integers are values ranging from 0 to 9. So I just have to come and change here to an integer. Now when declaring values, the integer values, you don't place them in double quotes, you just like write them the way they are. So maybe like 40. sorry for, and then make sure you end everything in a semicolon. So let's say integer my age. So then I'm now going to print my age inside here. So let me clear the output inside here. So if I now run it, then you see that 40 is being printed. So I can keep switching. So let's say I'm 400 years old, of which that might not be true anyway. So I'm just running it. So you now see that 400 is being printed out. Now, let's see how this thing happens. So let's say now I do something here. So let's say int my age is 400. So if then it's being highlighted an error. So it cannot be resolved to a variable. Why? There is actually rules for naming things. So and inside these rules, so I want you to know something here. When I type in these things here, you see that this one is not highlighted as an error, but this one is highlighted as an error. So you see that syntax error, variable declarators. So this means that the compiler takes these ones as maybe like a keyword. So and just remember that a keyword is a word with a predefined meaning which cannot be used for any other thing. So for example, I cannot say public, so I cannot use a variable as public. So these are keywords. So keywords have predefined meaning. So a string, an integer is a keyword. But once you maybe like precede them with 2 forward slashes, all becomes comments. And a comment is never executed in your execution. So for example, if I say int my name, so let me just do it right. My name is maybe like, let's say my name is John. Then I now print out my name. So according to my expectation, sorry, the name is a string. So remember, anything that comes in between double quotes is a string. So if I now run this, we expect that everything will run very well. So you see that John is being printed. So what happens if I now append this one? I use 2 double forward slashes. You see now that we have an error here, saying that the name is resolved to a variable, which means that it has not been declared. So we'll get to know what declaration and assignment of variables are. So you find that it has some errors here. So this means I have to remove this. So when you use a forward slash, 2 forward slash, that means you are commenting, and the comments are never executed. So let's go into the rules of naming variables. So I can name my variable as maybe like my name, and then have it as John. So of course it's a string. So as John. So don't worry, this just indicates that the value is not used, but it's very okay. So I can still have my name again. My name as maybe like John do. Now you see that I'm really naming it differently. String my name is equals to maybe like Fred. You see that it's still getting very well. So the compiler doesn't complain. Again, I can still say string my, sorry for the alarm. So string my, then what happens if I say now my name equal to this something like, let's say again, let's just say Omondi. Omondi is a Kenyan name, and it's a very nice one. So what happens here? So let's see. Now this becomes an error because let's see this. This is what we call the underscore naming, but mostly is being preferred with the Python programming language. And then I've also done a course on it, so make sure you check it out if you really need to get started with Python. This is the way now. We call this one the camel case naming. It follows the conversion of a camel. So with the 2 hubs, so you start with a small, the first character or the first words are always in small letters, and then the next character starts with a capital letter. So this is how we are going to be naming our variables in Java. So though these are actually the right way, but this is not the recommended way. So just understand that the recommended way of naming your variables in Java is this one. So we use the camel case. So let's say my name, then maybe like let's say I would have added another one here. So you see that everything that comes after this is a capital letter, is followed by a capital letter. So that's how you actually follow the camel case naming in Java programming. Now, one more thing, I want us to understand something called assignment and declaration. So let's see that, let's say I'm having my name again. So maybe like name. If you only have one word, then there's no need of saying my name. So you just use the small letter. So my name, then I'll just say again, John, then into a colon. So what you are trying to do here is declaration. So you just declare this. I am having a variable called name, and anything that comes after the equal sign is called the assignment. So you can still do it this way. So like string. So let's say just use another one. So let's now use an integer. So int my age. Then I can now say my age equal to 40. Now I want you to know that this same line is the same as these two lines. The only difference is this one is what we call declaration. This means that you are declaring values. So comments don't have to necessarily end with a semicolon. And what comes after this place is this is what we call now the assignment. So anything that comes after the equal sign, this is what we call the assignment operator. So for you to perform equal sign, so we will be using a double equal sign, but don't worry about that now. So if you now print this, we expect that everything will be printed as same. So I can now say my age, then again I can print out my name. So let's see what will happen. So if you now sorry, I didn't run my program. If you now run your program, you see that now 40 is printed in 2 lines, and then John is printed in 1 line. So we can still have this one. So let's just say here again my name, and remember to change the data type, and then remember again everything, any string comes in between a double quotes. So let's give it that name here. So I can now come and say here my name, then I'm going to do it here. So make sure that you are using the right variable name. So we have my name, and then we are now assigning it my name is Dale. So if you run the program, I want you to observe the difference. So we have Dale and we have John, because we started with the name, then we started followed by this name up here. So that is how you do variable declaration and assignment. But there's no need to use 2 lines of code while you can use 1 line of code. So I just wanted to make sure you get to understand this. Otherwise, we'd be going with the declaration and assignment directly with 1 line. So just still to make sure that everything runs, we have John as the name. Now let's understand what the data types are. So we've seen that there's values that you use double quotes, and then other values just assigning them directly. So we have okay, let's just maybe like let's not start with comments. So let's just say we have integers, and maybe like integers are numbers which range from 0 all the way to, these are numbers ranging from 0 to 9. So I can assign numbers in between this place. So I can say maybe like this time round I'm having 5, and it can still work. Then there's another data type called a string. So let's say maybe like, let me say just give it a name of so maybe like these are maybe double characters. These are just more than 1 character. So maybe like we can have a maybe like Kabarak University. So this will be considered as a string. Anything that comes between double quotes is a string. And any number that is ranging from 0 to 9, we call those integers. And anything that comes in between double quotes, that is a string. There's one more thing that comes in between double quotes. So character, maybe like vowel. So we have vowels. So let's get A. So anything, any single string, not a single string, but any one letter word is just a character. So it is one letter word. So these are just characters. So one letter character, and the official way of declaring it is using the char. So then you say maybe like vowel, like I, maybe like I, or maybe even K. It does not necessarily have to be vowels. So I can just say like maybe like I can just give a variable name with a single word as A. So I can have my character A as K. Now there's these values that we have like 5.256. Those are what we call doubles. So doubles are maybe like, let's say a discount. So let me just the way you would say a discount is maybe like you are being given a discount of 50.89. So anything with a decimal number values, these are what we call a double. So anything that has a decimal value. So but for values that have maybe like so many decimal points, so those one will take a form called a long, maybe like we can say maybe profit. So let's say you are undergoing, or a net worth of a person, so maybe like you have 5,000, and let's say five is it 5 million, or let's say 800, then maybe like 600. So you can use this, though it's throwing in an error. It's not an type. You must make sure that it ends with the L. So once you tell your compiler or your IDE that this is a long number, so I think this is around 5 billion and 5 billion. So let's say 5 billion, 5 million, 800,000 and 600. So this specifies a large number. So if you're storing really large values, then you'd prefer to store them in a long data type. So these are the data types. So we have one more data type called Boolean. Boolean maybe like, let's say it's raining. Then you can assign it to false. Or it takes in either false or true. So we can have another Boolean. Maybe like it's low. Then we can now say we have true. So these booleans help us maybe like in decision making. So let's say you want to withdraw some finance. You are writing a program for a banking organization, and then you would want to check like how does one qualify for a loan. Then you are going to write a program. So you might decide to use booleans. So with a boolean, it's either a 1 or a 0. So it's going to return 1 or a 0, which the same case means that it's either true or false. So for true, it takes in the 1. Then for false, it takes in the 0. So let's say you want to check for a loan limit. So you have to check, does the person have sufficient amount? If yes, then proceed to give the person some loan. Otherwise, then deny the person. So tell him maybe like insufficient amount in your account. So these are the most used data types in Java programming. So the next thing I want us to do, so we can, in fact, you can just maybe like decide to print them out. So you can say maybe like numbers, then you can again decide to print out maybe like the names, and then you can decide to print out maybe is low. So I'm not just going to print everything, but I'm just going to print a few of them. So if you now run that, so we have 5 as our first number, then the name was Kabarak University, then the boolean here is we assigned it to a true value, so that was islow, the one that we printed here. So you can play around with these values to make sure that you understand them. So that was all you had to understand about variables and data types in Java programming. So the next thing we're going to cover now is getting to understand more about this data type called a string. So let's get started with strings. So when it comes to strings, so I want you to remember the way we say that strings, characters that come in between double quotes. So you can say now we can just print out a simple string. So you can say just my name is string. So if you now run this, you see that it says my name is string because it's in between double quotes. So like my name is might be John, and if I now run the program, you see that this is being printed. But I want us to understand something here called string concatenation. So I'm going to remove that. So with string concatenation, it allows you to directly combine two strings. So let's say I have now maybe like, we can say maybe like the first name and the last name. So string first name. So let's say this is now maybe like Teams. Then make sure you end it with a semicolon. Then we have another string. So we have a last name. So let's just use a very simple names here, last name. So maybe you can say John. So instead of printing something like my name is maybe like James John, so we have something powerful with strings. So instead of doing this directly, and it doesn't give you a guarantee that your data is being stored by your computer. So what we can do here is we can use something called string concatenation. So string concatenations uses the plus symbol, just the normal mathematical expression. So with that, it takes in maybe like, I can just say my name is, and then I make sure I end. So this plus sign does not come in between these double quotes. So you have to just make sure like, it's just like maybe like adding two numbers. So maybe like 5 plus 2 or plus 4 which equal to 9. So you don't put your plus sign as inside the double quotes, otherwise it will be taken as a string. So we can say my name is, then I now have first name, and then again I can concatenate it with now the last name. So if I now run this, let's see what will happen. So it says now my name is Tim John, but there's no space here. So to add a space, you have again to add the opening and closing quotation marks, so that you can have this space to separate them. Run the program. You now see that my name is Tim John. Now, that was something very quick about strings. So it allows you to combine strings in different ways. So we can now head into these methods. So methods are inbuilt. So instead of maybe like writing a whole file of code to execute something like hello world, like this main method is actually like really wide. So it's just like a bunch of code, but for now we'll come to understand what methods actually does. Just know that methods is just a big lines of code house, and let's just call it one word. So for example, like public void main. So this is just lines of code, but it has been housed and compressed under these just very few names. So let me just remove this. So with methods, we can perform something. So we can just say maybe like we can have a string. Note we can have a string like my name. Then you can say like Mr. So let's J Robert John. So we can perform methods to check if maybe like it starts with maybe certain characters or it ends with certain characters. So to do that, we're just going to print them directly. So my name dot. So we can say maybe like to check if it ends with something. So we can say does it end with maybe like jhen. So if we now run this, then it's going to return a boolean. So it's returning true because our last character here is jhen. So what if we just maybe like added something here? Of course, our string does not end with this type, so we expect a false value to be returned. So and to check is, so that is with the ends with. Now to check if our characters start with a certain. So remember, this is very case sensitive. So if you now type in this one, so we now have to change this one to starts with. Clear the output. So if you now run that, you see that now it's true. So let's see if we now use the small letter r. So remember, our compilers are really very case sensitive. So otherwise, you would have maybe like use something maybe like to lowercase. So let's just now check again if it's going to return maybe true or false. So it's returning true because we have converted this string into lowercase. So we are going to understand what this means. So just for leave it there. So then we can check the characters. So we can check how many characters are here, and to check that you use the length one. So it's we can now say my name dot length. So it's going to return the number of characters. So if you run it, then it's saying 11. But I want you to note here. So if you now start from counting from here, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 10. But when you do with the length, so if you can really see very well, so there's a dot here. So that's a space, and spaces are being counted. So it counts spaces. So this is actually like, if you want to perform, unless you want to escape the spaces. So we'll come to know something about escaping characters. So that's how you calculate the length of a string. Now the index of gives you maybe like the index of a certain character. So maybe like I want to get the index of B. So let's see something really interesting. Index of, let's say, B. So let's run. It's giving me 2. But if we count, it's 1, 2, 3. How is that possible? Now let's understand. Let's try to understand something here. Very simple. It's called the indexing. So 1, 2. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 10 and 11. So when you are counting values in computer, so we have something called the indexing. Just like the way you would start counting from 0, 1, 2 up to 100 or 1,000. When you are counting values in a computer, you start with index 0. So this the first character here is 0. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have the space 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's why we have, when we do indexing here, so our values will now be from 0 all the way to character number 10. But if it were normal, that's why we are getting 11 as our the total characters, because we are it counted until the space. But when we now count with indexing, it's always the n minus 1. So that's the total number minus 1. So we had 11, then we do 11 minus 1 is 10. So that's how we do indexing. So you can now say index 0, 1 up to index 10. But the total number of characters are 11. Just know that when doing indexing, you count from the index 0. So that's why when we run, we want to get the index of B, saying that it's index number 2 because it's 0, 1, and 2. So the next thing here after the index of is the replace. What the replace does is if you now do the dot replace, it takes in two parameters here, the target and the replacement value. So let's say I want to replace R with maybe like K. So I'm just going to say here, replace K, replace R, that's R. Then the replacement of this one, the replacement I want is maybe like small r. So if I now run this, let's see what would be printed. Now we have the robot with a small r. So instead of this one. So remember that it takes in the target and the replacement value. So if I now place something here that doesn't exist, like maybe like V. So let's see what would actually be printed if we try to replace values that doesn't exist in the memory. So it does not throw an error, but it just returns the way the values were before. So that was something interesting about the replacement of strings. Then we can convert them to upper and to lower case. Now, let's say we want to convert all these name into maybe into a capital, all to capital. So with this, I can just say print, then I can just call to uppercase. Then let me just add a print one here. So I can say now my name dot to lowercase. So this will print this entire string, all its characters to uppercase. Then this string again will now be printed all of its characters to lowercase. So let's run the program and see what will actually be printed. So you now have Robert John all in caps lock, then Robert John all in small letters. So that was a quick one on understanding the law, the happen and this. So let's see, there's something interesting here, dot string. So this one removes all space characters, unnecessary spaces. So let's say we have that string. Okay, so let's just print it without using the other way. So if you now see, I want you to note the difference. Robert John is printed way. How many lines? These are 8 tabs, 8 spaces. But if you now say dot trim, let's see what would be. No, let's just make it in a fantastic way. So we can now say my name dot trim, so that we can see the difference. So if you now run it, you see that the one with the trim has actually removed all these tabs, and then the one that we did not add the dot trim method did not trim the spaces. So that's how you perform. You use the trim method in strings. Then we have the escape character. So let's see something interesting here. So I'm just going to remove these spaces here. So let's say John had a nickname. So let's say like AKA. Let's call him Mzito. So Mzito is just a name anyway, so don't worry much. Now let's see. Let's try and so let's call him Rabbit so that it looks official. Anyway, what's the spelling of rabbit? I don't know. Okay. Now, if we want to run this program, let's run it. So we are getting an error. The error says we have something. It's not about the spelling, but it expected a semicolon and all these other things. So the error comes in because we declared that our string starts here and ends here, but then we are still adding other characters after this place. So to escape this, so that the compiler knows that this is just it's not, it should not be executed, it should be included. So you have to use the backslash before each and every of these expressions you are using. So if you now run the program, we now see that Robert John, so it's AKA actually, it's not supposed to be AKS. Clear that and then run your program. So you now see that it's AKA rabbit. So this has been now included as it's a formal statement. So you use the backslash to actually add to make sure that if you have something in quotes, you want to make some quotation. So you have to add these opening and closing double quotes. So we are done with escaping characters. So let's say again you want to print a file. So maybe like maybe like file. So maybe like you add, maybe you want to print something in maybe like for Windows you would go maybe like home C. So let's say you want to print something in the directory. So you would go the C directory. Then maybe like you would have users. So you would go like the C directory. Then we have users and maybe like videos. Now let's see what would happen if you try to run the program. So we're just getting a bunch of errors. So to do that, you have to use the double sign, the double backslash. So if you do this now would just be like, it would just look like a user location. So maybe like you have that into C, drive C, then you have the users, then you have the videos. Now, if you run that, you see now that you have the exact location here as C, users, videos, and etc. So that's how if you want to perform a locations. So then if you want to print something in a new line, of course you would either use the print line. So for example, if I wanted to print all these in a new line, and let's say I just print this one. So Robert, all, then it appears all in letters. So let me say I have another string here. So string my school. Then I have maybe like School of Engineering. And then I want to print it again here. So I will just say S out my school. So with this, if I run the program, let's see what could happen without the print line. If you now run your program, if you now run your program, you see that everything is now printed in your Robot file and then everything. So if you want to print them without using the print line, then you can use the backslash n character. So this will print your string now in a new line. So let me clear that. So if you now run your program, you see that now Robert and then the School of Engineering, but all this has been handled by Java using the print line, so you won't need to actually perform that. So you can just leave them as default. Then if you want to give some spacing in your strings, so maybe like I want to print John, then gives a very long space after here. So let's say I want to have four tabs. So I'll just say \t. This will give me spacing. So I'm just going to remove this one, then just going to remove that one again for simplicity. Now run your program. Then note these spaces here. So already the compiler indicates with an arrow that there were some tab spaces inside here. So it indents it with actually 4 lines. So that's all we have to get to understand about methods. So let's get started with some other interesting things. Today we are going to learn about mathematicals, doing math in programming with Java. And of course, when it comes to math, of course, you know that there's addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. There's something interesting here called modulus. So we'll get to understand what all these operations get to be executed or done in Java programming. So the next thing is there is something called casting. So we are going to see how this work. Then we have value increment and the flow of execution. So when it comes to the flow of execution, remember in your high school you did something, there was this thing called BODMAS, the brackets of division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. And then later on we'll finish with something here called string and integer. I don't know if you call it typecasting or so we'll get to understand how it works, how all this works. So let's say we have our integer here. We want to perform addition. So instead of saying maybe like print out 10 plus 10, of which you expect that the answer will be 20. So once you run your program, you get 20. So instead of directly doing this, then it's an awesome way of getting to store your values instead of only printing them out to the console. So I'm going to say declare 2 integers, so int a. Let me give it a value of 40, and then I have int b. Let me say 20. Now let's say we want to perform these operations. So instead of saying now like 20 plus 40, which would give us 60, we can now perform the operations using the variables we assigned here. So that means we can now print out to S out to our, what do we call it now? The console. So we want to say add A and B. So if you now run that, so we expect that our output should be 60. And that's the case. So we can again store the sum. So instead of directly performing the operations here, then I can say, because they are all integers, then I can just say below this. So after this point, I can now say int sum equal to A added to B. And then I would just now come and print out the sum here. So if I now print out the sum, just clear the output. If I now print the sum, then I expect the same scenario. So that's 60, because we've just told our compiler that, hey, I want to add A and B, and then store this result in this variable called sum. So this sum now, I want to access it. So when the computer now, the compiler goes to this variable, it finds that there's some instruction inside the variable. It's saying you add A, and which A is 40, and then to B, of which B is 20. So if you perform that, then that's how you perform addition. So you're done with that. So the next thing you want to do is perform subtraction. So to perform subtraction, sorry, you would do just a minus b, just like the way you do your mathematical operation. So you now change that to something like subtraction. Then I would run it. Then we now see that the output is now 20. So that's 40 subtracted 20 gives you 20. Clear my output again. So I think this is really a very simple subtopic. So then for multiplication, instead of using the cross sign like would you do it in mathematics, we use something called asterisk. So the asterisk stands in for the X format, the X symbol in mathematics for doing multiplication. So I'm just going to give it a variable of mult. Then I'm going to print out the multiplication. If I run it, then I now expect that 40 is 800. So you can perform so many other, again, like now, if I have another integer like c, then I can perform it. Then I'm going to declare it here, so int, maybe like c equal to 10. So if I run it, I now expect it's around 8,000. So it's giving me 8,000. So, but for simplicity, I'm just going to keep it to 2 values. Just remove this one again. Yeah, just run to make sure that your program is still working well. So if you run it back to 800. So that was how you perform multiplication. Now, for division, instead of using, I'm not sure if I can really type it, and then this one. Now, instead of using the hyphen and the two, the upper and the lower full colon symbol, so we use the forward slash to perform division in programming. So if you now, and then let me just, so I'm just changing the variable names to make sure that they are really descriptive. So if I now run this, so that should be how many? 20 divided by 2. So it's giving me now 2. Yeah, so the next thing again I would want us to do is modulus. So assuming that we are working on a number, so if of course if you divide an even number with an odd number, there will be a remainder. So if you want to print out the remainder, then so let's say, because just use simple values. So 4 divided by 3, it only goes there into 4 once, and then the remainder is 1. So I can just say mod, then the modulus, we use now the percentage simple sign. So if I do now a modulus b, then I expect only 1 to be printed. So if you run your program using the Ctrl-Alt-N for Windows, then you see now that the remainder is 1. So that's how you perform operations in mathematics. So before we go into casting, I want us to do first the flow of execution. The execution flow. So remember, in high school or primary, you use something called broadmass to execute. Now, assuming that I want to perform some multiplication here, so maybe like because I'm really combining so many other values, so I'm just going to use a double. So remember, double is just a decimal place value. So double results. Then I'm going to say, let me just remove this. Okay, sorry. So let me just do it this way. So assuming that we have these we have 5 multiplied by 2, then added to 3. Then I'm just going to store these values in a variable name called maybe like results. So I'm going to say I'm going to store this in a value called results, and I want the data type to be double. So remember that double is always just it's going to allow me to do to have values with the decimal places. So if I now print results, I want you to just guess what will be the answer. So of course you just go 5 multiplied by 2 is 10, added to 3 is 13. So it should return 13, of which is now returning 13.0. So assuming that we had already we just did we gave it to an integer value. So if you now observe, it's just saying 13. So but because we cannot predict that our results will not have a decimal, that's why we prefer to use a double. So with the double, we are pretty sure that the results we are going to get, even if there is a dot remainder, then that means that it's going to be printed. Now, assuming that I do this, which is in this one in project. So what do you think is the answer? Do you think still going to be 13? Pause the video and think of it and then execute. Now then, once you've done, you can now execute it. Well, if you now run it, you see now that things are changing. Why? Because in your primary or your secondary, of course, you during the flow of execution, you start with brackets, then division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. So brackets comes first. So you first add 2 and 3. That now becomes 5. Now then you come say 5 multiplied by 5 now gives us the 25. Now let's do a value increment. So with value increment, we use something. So let's say we had value like int a, then we assign it to maybe like 30. So the next time we would want to increment it by 1, we'd now say a equal to 30 plus 1. So if we now print the value of a, then we expect that our value should now be 31. So if you run your program, then you're going to see that the value is now 31. So what happens if you want to keep adding 1 to the value? So there's actually a simple way we can do that. So you can actually say a, then have the value of a, then plus 1. So we can use this one. So if you run your program, then you're going to see that the output will again remain to be 31. So assuming that we don't want to keep repeating this, then we want the value to be short. So to eliminate this, you can just do a plus equal to 1. So that's how you increment directly values. Just run your program to make sure that everything is working pretty well. Now the same thing happens to decrement a value. Then I'll just use a -1. So if I run my program, then you see now that it's 29. So we'll come to understand more about incrementing and decrementing values in Java programming. So when it comes to something we'll look later on called loops. Now there's one more thing, typecasting. Now assuming that I have this, so let me say I have my age here. So my age equal to, so let me say it's a string value, or let me just say my age equal to 30. Then of course this is an integer. Then I have my name. My name of course is a string. So let's say name. Let's say I have name. So let's say Teams is my name. All right. Now assuming that I want to perform string concatenation, what if I say name, then I concatenate it with now my age, then I run my program? So there's no error for now. But if you run your program, the compiler does something we call implicit, not implicit, but typecasting. So it does casting. So it knows that this is a string, and then this is an integer. Of course, you cannot perform maybe like my age, then you add it to name. You cannot add a string with an integer. So let's say I have an integer. So let's say maybe like results. So the compiler is already complaining that there's not mismatch, but there's mismatch. So this one won't be printed unless you perform something called casting. So let's say I had here maybe like cache. Then I had printed it in maybe like string format. You now see even if I type here a cache. Now, if you now place this one of value, so it says that it's a string, and this one is already an integer. So I cannot add these values. That means again I cannot print my results. So to do this, you can do explicit casting. So just before this, I can now say that I'm going to call the integer class. So integer dot, then I'm going to pass int, and then it takes in a parameter inside. So that's my variable name. That means I now pass in this one as a string. Now if you now note, then this absolutely no error, and if I run this, my compiler should give me the exact results. So that's 60. So from this point, it's taking this one as a string, and then this one now as an integer. But once we do the implicit explicit casting, then the compiler now knows that this variable name with a string inside is now actually is now an integer. So that's why it's returning these values. So that's how you perform string and integer casting. Now let's say I change this one to double. So then I don't have to like really do this, because this is an integer and then this one is a double. Of course, they are all integers, they are all numbers. So I'm not going to start now like integer and then pass everything. So the only thing I'm just going to do is I'm just going to perform a direct casting here with the cache. So if I'm now going to perform that, then I expect that my results would return it. So sorry, it should not be this way. It should be inside there should be now the integer. Then you pass in your value. So if I now run my program, I expect that I won't have this double value here. But if I had changed this into a double, and then let's say I remove this value, then I place this one into a double. No, it can just remain as an integer, but now my final result has to be a double. Now, if I run that, then I expect my 0.5 to be present in my result. So we have 60.5. Then the other one is when we did explicit casting into an integer, would now remain to be 60. So we're done with that, and we are also done with casting. So I really hope you grabbed some content on mathematical operations. So that was all you had to understand about this. So let's try to again dig a little bit more into understanding the math module. So module, these are actually like built-in methods. So we'll come to understand what methods are. So for now, just know that they make things to work simple. Yeah. So I'm going to perform some operations here. So remember that there's a rounding of a value, then there's getting to a maximum minimum number, or you can try to generate some random numbers. So to allow us, Java has the inbuilt-in math module. So we let's say I want to round off a value. So let's say maybe like, let me use double. So let's make double, and then maybe like let's say discount. So let's say we are trying to offer some discount to our customer. Then we have this value of 50.506. So of course, if we now round off this value, we expect that it's going to be 51, because the 0.5 is already beyond 0 to 4. So remember, for you to round off a value, this point, the first value here, for it to go to 51, it has to be beyond 5. So that means it has to be 5 to 9. So because our first value here is 5, then means we are going to add 1 to the number. So if you now print out the value, let's first print out the value without performing any rounding off. It's 50. Now let's print the value after. So to print the rounded off value, so we are going to say math. So you have to call the math method. So once you have the math, and then you now have a period here, so maybe like dot, then you can see now you can perform maximum, minimum, the power, the square root of a number, and all those. So but we only want to round off the value. So you type in round. So on the value we want to round off is the discount. And then let's run the program. So we expect that it should be 51. So it's giving us the value of 51. So assuming that this value was 4, so that is not beyond 5, then we try to run the program. Now we have, because it's 4, then it won't add 1 to this. So that's how the round method does for mathematics in Java. So the next thing is a sale. So what sales means is it's going to round it upwards, whether it's between 0 to 4 or 5 to 9. So assuming this value. So remember, I want you to keep in mind that if you run this one, it's not going to be rounded off because it's below. It's not beyond 5. So that's why we have this 50. But now, what happens if we use the sale method? Let's see what will happen. Boom. So it's rounding it off to 51. So whether it meets the condition or not, that means it's going to round it or upwards. Even if the value now, let's say we have 8, nothing will change. So whether we like it or not, whether the compiler like it or not, I don't know if it has emotions, but it's going to round it off to the next value. Now, something interesting here again. This assuming that, of course, before we back into the round first, then we have our discount. So let me just fix that. Yeah. So we expect that now it will be 51 because we are rounding. We are rounding it 0.8 is above. Now, what happens if we use now the flow one here? So if you use the flow with you pass in the discount, whether we like it or not, the compiler likes it or not, nothing will be rounded off to the next number. So it will be brought down to the same number that was here. Even if we have now like a lower value 3, then I print it, then you find that we now have still the same 50.0.50. So again, you can still cast this into an integer. So you can say int. So if you want to get the values in an integer, so you just have to do the explicit casting. So the value would now become an integer. So instead of having 50.0 for the floating point value, so if I now run this, then I expect that I'm just going to get my integer. That's 50. Yeah, so that's how you perform floating. And then there's something more, not floating, but the flow. There's something more interesting. So if you want to find the largest value, so the larger value between two values, then we use the maximum and the minimum. So to get the maximum number between two numbers, you separate them with a comma. So I'm going to say, just going to remove this one. Again, I'm going to remove this one. Now, instead of me like going up here, so I can just say max, sorry. So to get the maximum number between two values, I can pass in a number 20 and 10. Syntax error. All right. Now I'm just going to call in math dot. So max. So then it takes in two integers. So we have the first integer and the second integer. So 20. Then the next one I'm going to place is 10. Then I make sure I end with this. Then I'm maybe like, let me say int, maybe like largest. Then if I now come to print my largest integer here, then I expect that I'm going to get 20 because 20 is the largest integer among these. So I'm just going to remove that because we are done with that. Okay, cool. Now run your program. If you run your program, you expect that of course 20 is largest. So let's say now I have this one. Now I change this one to 100. So it doesn't matter of the exact order. So let's see. 100 is the largest. So what happens if I want to get the minimum? So I just switch to change it to this one. Then if I now run my program, the minimum should now be 20. So that's why it's printing 20. So let me add here 200 so that we can observe the difference. So 200 and 100, 100 is the minimum. So 100 gets printed. We are done with that. So let's see something interesting here again. So how we generate random numbers. So let's say I want to count from 1 to 10 randomly without saying 1, 2, 3. I want my computer to generate it. So I'm going to do this. So let's say now we have this betting sites. They use random numbers or the guess. So let me just say the guess game. So I'm going to say again math dot random. Now, if I print the guess, let's see what will actually be printed. Let me just place this one into a double. Then if I run my program, this is just going to generate randomly a number. So it's generating this one. So if I run it again, it's going to generate a different number. That is 0.00. So this one generates random numbers between just the range of 0. So between 0.01 to 0.00 infinite. Now, let's say I want to generate random numbers between 1 and 10. So what am I going to do? So I'm going to multiply this place by 10. So it's going to give me, it's going to generate integers between actually 0 and 10. So let me just place that again there. Now, if I do this, then it's going to generate this. Then I'm going to do, I'm going to cast them into an integer. So because it normally generates a float value, so that's why the compiler is complaining. Now, if I run this program, then I expect that it's going to generate whole numbers. So the first one is generated is 0. Then the second one again is generating is 0. The third number is being generated is 0. The fourth number is being generated is 0. So where is the error? So the exact error comes in here. So remember that random generates a double value. So we have to change this one into a double. Now, I'll then remove the direct casting first. So once we're done with that, let's just start again with this value. So if we run our program, then we check now that it generates all numbers. So it's generating 7 point something. Then it's gonna be generate another one. So if you run, it's generating the third one. It's generating number 3. If you run it again, it's going to generate 4. So if I want them to be whole in integers, then I can now return the casting type to be an integer. So let me run it again. So if you run it, so if you closely look at it, what we are trying to do is we have this double, and then we are telling the random number we want integers here. Integers. And I remember what I said earlier. If it's generating, then it's generating from 0 to 1. So remove that. Now run the program. You find that we have 5. So the only thing we now have to do here is we have to round it off. So we can say here math.round. Then we want to round this value. So of course we are going to close this one here. Now if you now run your code, then we expect that now we have rounded values, but again we want them as all whole integers. So I'm just going to cast this one here into an integer values. Then I'm going to say int. So this will allow me to get full numbers. So if you run now your code, you see now that we have 6. Run your code again. Then we now have 6 again being generated. Now we have 4. Run your program. We now have 5. If you now run your program again, we expect that different number will be generated. If you now run, you see now that 10 has been generated. If you run your program again, where now 7 has been generated. So if you run it again, then 4 is being generated. If you run it again, it's generating 6, and so on and so forth. So that's how you deal with the inbuilt-in mathematics module in programming. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get user input. So how do I, instead of maybe like saying int a equal to 50, how do I get a user to enter from the keyboard, to enter this 50 from the keyboard? Remember, when we assigned values, like maybe an integer, we assigned it to 50. This we call it add quoting. So when you add quote a value, is you give the exact value, the exact data the way you want it. So instead of allowing the IDE, that's the integrated development environment, or your VS Code in short, or the editor, or where you write your code, instead of allowing it to get input from the user. Now, to get input from a user in Java programming, you use the scanner. So the scanner. So remember that when we were printing something, then we said S out. So S out, S out. So we talked of the system dot out. So we were writing out to the console. Now we want to write inside this console. So what do we do? So from your guessing, if you guess now, because we have the scanner, we use the scanner to get values. So I would just say scanner. Then I would now say the system dot in. So I'm now writing my values right in maybe like I'm now writing it into the file or the console. I'm not sure if you can write into the console. So I'm writing my values into to the console. Oh, my spelling. Okay. Now I'm writing it into right into the console. So let's say I want to perform addition. So let's see. So remember, we're going to understand more about methods and objects. So we're going to say scanner, then give it a variable name, scanner, and then new scanner. Then we have to pass in the system dot in. That's all you have to do. But now for IntelliJ, so you just place your cursor here, then inside and then press Alt Enter, then it will directly import the scanner. But for VS Code, we are going to import it directly. So just know that this is a object creation. So we come to understand what objects are, but just make sure that you master how this is done. So for that, I'm going to at the top of my let me just do these the top of my Java class. So I'm going to say import java.util.scanner. So once you import that, then you see now that the error is gone. So make sure you end it with the semicolon. You now see that we don't have any more errors. So the next thing we want to do is we want to now get the input from a user. So let's say we want to get the input of the name of the user. So we're going to say maybe I'll enter your name. So let's say enter your first name. So for now, let's just keep it into one name. So if we do this, then to take the input from the user, we now use this method called scanner. So now the variable name, scanner dot, because we are taking a string, then you're going to say dot next. Then you just close in, you close with a semicolon. So don't worry about this. It says the scanner is never closed. Now just run, but do not use the Control Alt N because it's not going to give you the terminal. So what I prefer, that is if you are on VS Code, but if you are on IntelliJ, then or any other IDE, then you can directly run it. So I want you to go to run, then go to run without debugging. So if you go to run without debugging, then it's going to tell you enter your first name. So for me, I'm going to say Teams, then the terminal exit. So once we have this input, we can now print out the name of the user. So we can say, so let's use a string concatenation. So you can say your name is, then we now pass in the scanner. Not the scanner. So we can now store this into a variable. So let's say we want to store this into a string object, then we give it a name. So let's say we want to store this. So once we've already received the value from the scanner, then we can store it in a variable name, in a variable called name. Then this name, of course, is our type, which is a string. So and then I'm now going to say name. So like we did again, so go to run, then run without debugging. So it's going to give you that. So I'm going to say my name is Teams. So now it says that your name is Teams. Now what happens if I try to enter two names? So let's see what will happen. So terminal, not terminal, run goodness, no, sorry, goodness, oof. So I'm going to terminal. So it's already executed. So I'm just going to say, let me say Teams Owen. Though, you see now that it's just saying your name is Teams. So this next here only takes in one string. So to make sure that we are using, we are consuming the entire user input in a string format, and then we use the next line. So the next line will now take in all the strings that a user enters. So run without debugging. So if I do that, then it's going to, okay, it's really full here. So let me just delete the output, then run without debugging. Now it's going to ask me for my username. So now let me just say Teams Owen Ninja. So you now see that it says your name is Teams Owen Ninja. So I want you to know the difference. So we have the scanner, next line, and then we add next. So next only takes in one string, but the next line takes in as many input as the user does. So let's say we want to get an integer value from the user. So let's say we want to perform addition, add A and B. So to do that, we're going to say system.out, then we're going to tell the user enter int A. So we now come here and say scanner dot next. So because we are only taking an integer, and this time not a string, so we are going to say next int. Then we're going to store this in a variable. We've said that we call it A, so that's the variable name. So, and of course this is an integer. Now the next thing we want to tell our user again is out. So okay, I don't know what's wrong, what's happening. Okay, let me just then so we want to get an integer, so that's our two int A and B. So let's say now once you've entered int A, then enter int B. Then we are going to get this. So we are going to say from the scanner dot the next integer. Now we want to get, then make sure you end it the semicolon. Then we are going to store this value in a variable called B, and then of course this is an integer. So okay, let me just do this so that they are all in. So this is not like Python, where Python complains about indentation. So once we have the integers, now we can perform addition. So we can now say int addition equal to A added to B. Then we can now print out the result. So we can now say the addition is, then we now place in our addition, our integer. So if we now run this, so let's say we now run without debugging. It says enter int A, I enter 4, enter int B, I enter 5. Now it says the addition is 9. So again, you can get double values, or you can even like do direct concatenation to make sure that you know the number. So I can say the addition of, then I add this of A, then concatenate it, then a space, and then I'm going to say B, then I'm going to concatenate it again, is the result. So what I'm just trying to do here is I'm just trying to do some formatting to get the number of A, B, and the result. So if I now do again run, then perform run without debugging. Let me just clear this output. Not here. Boom. So run, then run without debugging. So if I do that, then I'm going to enter int 5, then let's say 7. So then it now says the addition of 5 and 7 is 12. So that's how you can just do string concatenation. Now let's say we want to get a double value, or I want to perform simple interest calculation. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say at the scanner, I'm going to actually like tell the user, okay, and then I'm going to tell the user like I want the So remember, to calculate simple interest, you would need the amount, then the rate, and the time. Now, because we are not sure of we are not sure that the amount will be in actually a whole integer, so we are going to use the double. So we are going to say, we are going to first tell our user to enter the amount. So you can say, so let's call it principal, enter principal amount. So to get the principal amount, I'm going to say scanner dot, because we want we are not sure if it's an integer, and then we're going to say next double. Then make sure you store it this one. So we're going to store this in a value called it's a double, so in a value called principal. Great. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to get the rate. So we're going to tell the user enter loan rate amount and the rate. So for the rate, again, we are not sure it's going to be an integer, so we are going to return a double, then we call it this one rate, and then we are going to get the input from the user. So we're going to say next double. Then the next thing we want to now do is we want to get the time. So the time can be 2 years, 3 years. So that's we are not sure if it's going to be like 2.5 months. So we're just going again to go with the double. So we're going to say s out, then enter time in years, and then we're going to store this in a double. So double, then we can now say time. Then we can take the user input. So it's going to be next double. Now you can now say that the interest, of which is going to be a double. So we are now done with getting user input. So we now want to calculate the interest. So we're going to say double interest. Let's call it amount. Then we're going to say this is being calculated by saying that it's principal amount multiplied by, so the rate is always a rate over 100. So I'm placing it in brackets so that we get the exact execution, multiplied by the time, then it's there. So we forgot here to perform multiplication. So that's how we do it. So we can now print to the user the loan amount. So say now the loan interest is, then we now concatenate it with the interest amount. So we will say interest amount. Yeah, so that is how you perform. So we forgot the addition one for the concatenation. So let's say we run our program. So that's all you had to do. So we're just going to perform a quick recap about that. So it's now saying enter the amount. So let's say I enter 20,000. So the rate is at 5%. Then the time is for 2 years. Now it's saying that the loan for the interest is 2,000. So if you perform this one very well, so using the principal, so we are going to say that the loan, or we are giving it the principal amount times rate times time. So rate is always divided by 100. So that's how you perform all this. So that was all you had to understand about getting user inputs and doing some calculation. So you can now build your own calculator. So I want you to build your calculator that takes in 2 numbers, then performs addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Then we'll proceed from there.